Hey everyone, this is Martin from How to Make Mobile Games on March 7th, 2018, Wednesday here in Manchester, England, and I'm on my way to work. This video is talking about how to build a $1 billion app business, because I'd recently seen a video from one of the co-founders of Halo, which is a taxi service app. It's kind of similar to Uber, but it's also has like statistics trackings for taxi drivers, and he did a presentation along with his new book that he'd just released called How to Build a $1 Billion App Business or something like that. And it was really interesting because he went into a lot of the business decisions in his presentation of why they did this and how they went about finding the right market and testing. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, since I do work in the app business, or I work in the game/app business, and I do enjoy watching those presentations specifically to the industry that I work in. I'm just trying to recall like what were kind of the major like points that he was making in this video. It was a few days ago now, so it's not, I think maybe last week or sometime. It's not very fresh in my mind, but I think one of the big points was the whole market validation thing, and I've mentioned this in my video last night as well, about being able to clearly answer what problem are we solving and who is going to pay for this. You know, like, you've really got to be able to answer those clearly. Like, is it a problem, yes or no, and be really strict with yourself on the answer, and don't try and kind of fluff it in any way. You know, it has to be answered. Definitely this is a problem, and definitely these people will pay for it. And you can do that through actually asking people directly and seeing what their problems are, or you could build a small beta. And one of the ways that they did it was they were building a taxi app, this Halo app, and they approached taxi drivers to find out what their problems were. You know, what issues did they have? And one of them was they didn't know exactly what their optimal times were and when they were making the most money. Also, their optimal locations. So, for example, you know, if they were around the airport, maybe they'd make more money there per hour because the drives are longer, or maybe the city centre. And these kind of things they didn't know. So that's the kind of tools they provided. One of the interesting points he made as well was with a taxi app like Uber and their app was the chicken and egg problem. And this is like a social network problem as well. And it's a very interesting problem and a very interesting question to ask yourself. If, for example, with their app Halo, if they said to users, hey, come onto our platform, we've got taxis all over the place and you can get a taxi in 3 minutes. And they'll say, okay, well, there's no taxi drivers yet. So say, okay, well, they go to the taxi drivers first and say, okay, hey guys, come onto our platform, and there's a ton of users who have our app, people will use our app to hail you as a taxi. But there's no users, so why would I use your app? Do you know what I mean? So you've got to have one in order to get the other, so it's like the catch-22 situation. And one of the guys, I think his co-founder, said he knows how to handle the chicken and egg problem, and this was to give the taxi drivers that statistics platform that I talked about, that analytics platform, where they can say, okay, clearly, right, I'm making this much money on this particular route, or I'm making this much money if I go that way, or these are my downtimes, or this is when I need to rest because I don't make any money through the day on these points. And that attracted the taxi drivers, and then from that point, then they could say to users, hey, you know, download our app, or they could get more users and they'd be able to fulfill, you know, their taxi needs. So that was really interesting, that chicken and egg point. He also made an interesting point about the time that it takes. Now, this really stood out to me. The time that it takes and the average age of these $1 billion app companies. So they included companies like obviously Uber, I think Airbnb, Snapchat. Oh boy, I can't remember the other ones that were up there. But it was a handful. It was a handful of companies, a very popular ones that everyone knows. The average age of the founders of these companies was 34 to 37. And that was interesting. That was really interesting, because we often get this idea that people who start these billion-dollar app companies, tech startups in Silicon Valley are all 21 years old. You know, the Mark Zuckerbergs and all that, or Bill Gates. You know, they made it out of their garage when they were 16 and all that stuff. And that really skews it. That skews the reality a lot, because I think more often than not, that is not the case. As in, more often, guys or women who are super successful and build a very powerful, very large company, very successful, become billionaires, millionaires, whatever you call success, are 30 plus, 35 plus. From what I understand in China, those who are millionaires, the people who made their first million, were predominantly in their 40s. It takes a lot of time. It really does. I think the other point that he made as well, that the average time it takes to reach success, again, whatever you want to call that, or be big, IPO, have an exit, break that $1 million line, is 7 years. It took 7 years for them to build. Candy Crush Saga, the game where the match 3 game by King.com, they were in business for 12 years before Candy Crush Saga came along. I think King.com had a web game portal where you could play free, or you could actually bet in the games as well. And I think it was semi-popular. Obviously, it kept the company going, and I believe at the time were based in London and still are. So it must have been okay to pay the bills, but they didn't hit it big until Candy Crush Saga. Apparently they released it over Christmas one time, and they came back after Christmas to look at the stats, and they thought their analytics back-end server was broken because the stats were so high. When in fact, no, they'd made a phenomenal success, even though they didn't believe that they had. And I think in the case of Candy Crush Saga or King.com, it was very much... It was partly luck, in my opinion, because it is a great game and they built a great product, of course, but I always think with apps, what particular problem were they solving? They weren't solving a specific problem out there which hadn't been solved before. They were just making another match 3 game like Bejeweled that happened to catch on and it happened to do well. Now, they really did well in terms of crafting a great user experience which kept the user lured in enough to keep going and challenged enough to play the next level and also make money as well. But the guy who was doing this presentation, he said it took them 12 years to reach that point, and he didn't think that he wouldn't last that long. He said, no, I don't think I'd go 12 years building a company and not have any big success. He would have closed it a long time or just moved on in some way. So that was interesting, and that's often my opinion with games now. There is a desire for games, but there's not a need. The games, that's how games feel to me. You're not solving any specific problem, and the problem of games has already been solved, i.e. people want entertainment. It's already been solved. But those other points about the average sort of founder age of these billion-dollar companies, app companies, being 34 to 37, was very interesting. So those guys have been around the block. They'd had their failures. He talked also about companies like Instagram, how they'd had a flop before Instagram became Instagram. I can't remember what the name of the site was, but it wasn't like, in the first iteration, in the first few weeks that Instagram was released and everyone was like, hey, this is, great, and it became an overnight success. No, it took time. WhatsApp as well, I believe took like 7 months to develop. But it's interesting with the WhatsApp business model, that was obviously one of the apps mentioned as well. It was bought by Facebook for several billion. God, it was a massive number. But it only makes like 50 million a year. Something like that. I can't remember. But because WhatsApp doesn't have a specific monetization model like WeChat in China. WeChat in China allows you to send payments to anybody who also has WeChat and buy things with WeChat coins as well. instantly. It's just like scanning a QR code, and then it takes it out of your WeChat account, and WeChat takes a percentage of every transaction. Now that's a great business model right there, you know, getting a small percentage. You have to get the business model down. You have to say, okay, who is going to pay for this and why, and will they? It's really important. So as I'm trying to build this map-based location messenger app, I've got to really figure out who is going to pay for this and why. The first version of this app that I'm building doesn't have to be the great monetization or the exact how can I say it? The first version can obviously just be a test bed, and if I build up, say, a follow-up app which uses the same kind of tech, i.e. maps and messaging, then it can be something unrelated to what the first one was. So say the first version is just a social app, and the problem with social apps is nobody pays. Nobody's going to pay for a social app unless it has something quite unique, like, for example, the ability to, you know, see on a map on a map where all of your kids are, for example, or to see where your husband or wife are on a map. Would people pay for that? I don't know. But let's say, for example, on a map, you can find a handyman to help you change your oil, and that handyman charges £20, for example, which is a big saver on going to a garage where you get your car fixed, and we would simply take a percentage of that. Now that makes sense to me because it saves the user a ton of money. It allows somebody who is a handyman to make a little bit of extra money as well if they're available and round the corner. You know, oh yeah, I can change oil in 5 minutes, I'll do it for you. Or let's say fixing a computer, my computer's got a problem. Okay, I'll come round and I'll fix it. I'll take a look at it for £20. We take a small percentage of that. So we are the market, and we just take and we make revenue through that transaction. Same as the Uber model, same as the Airbnb. Now that's later down the line, because I think that whole money system and taking a little bit and all that is going to require a lot more time and research. Legally, I don't know how that would be handled. What systems would you use? Would it be PayPal or something like that? How would you verify payment? Is that built into, say, a PayPal SDK? You know, verification and all those things. So I've really got to figure that out. So that's my point, is version 1 could just be a test bed of, hey, does the tech work? Can you message? Can you see people on a map? Yes or no? And then following up on to actually, okay, this is the functionality, this is what the app is used for, to actually make money as a business model. And I think that's really important. And that was one of his main points in this whole thing as well. He also spoke of companies like Tinder as well, because he was in the dating website scene for a while. And that was pretty interesting. Tinder has been around since 2012. That's a long time. I didn't realize it had been around that long. But it was different in that it was based on people around you nearby, and also because it was just a single picture as opposed to like their bio, and you have to read all about them. So that was very interesting. And people do pay for that. People do pay for Tinder. People will pay for dating websites. Of course, probably the guys mainly. I'm guessing. I've never tried to build a dating app before, but I'm guessing it's guys who will always pay for that predominantly. But what I'll do, guys, is I'll put a link to that presentation below. If you are in the app business, I would definitely recommend checking it out. And if you are on Amazon, getting his book as well. I'll need to have a read of it or listen to the audio book. But it was very interesting coming from the business sort of perspective. He also talked about, you know, B2B and B2C sales as well. You know, who is your target customer? Is it the user, you know, the standard consumer, or is it a business? Is it an enterprise software you're making? So very interesting thoughts. But guys, I'm gonna go now, pretty much at work. Thanks for listening. More videos coming soon. Let me know what you think of this one. And let me know if you're making $1 billion or not, or millions or not with your apps. I'd be very curious to know. Anyway, guys, have a good one. I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.